The champagne glass shattered against marble. Imani didn't flinch. She kept her eyes on Piper's untied shoelace, crouching in the vast foyer while chaos erupted 3 feet above her head. Miranda Caldwell's voice cut through the August heat pouring through the open front door.
I don't care what the caterer said. Fix it.
Not to her husband, not to the event coordinator hovering near the staircase, to Imani. The 5-year-old's fingers trembled as Imani tied the lace into a perfect bow. Piper's brown eyes were wet, but she wasn't crying yet. She had learned not to cry when her mother used that voice. Imani squeezed the little girl's hand twice.
Did you hear me? You're okay. I'm here. I'm here.
Imani stood slowly, smoothing the white apron over her navy dress. Her hair sat in a tight, neat bun. Not a strand loose. Never a strand loose. She met Miranda's gaze with the practiced calm of someone who had spent a lifetime being looked through instead of at. Yes, ma'am. Miranda's lips pressed into a thin line. She wore white linen that probably cost more than Imani's monthly salary. Her blonde hair caught the light from the chandelier overhead. Everything about her screamed money, but her eyes screamed tired. The children need to stay upstairs during the brunch, out of sight. Piper's hand tightened around Imani's palm. They were invited, Imani said quietly. Noah mentioned he was excited to. I've changed my mind. Miranda turned toward the living room where staff rushed past with flower arrangements. Keep them entertained. Keep them quiet. The door to Preston Caldwell's office clicked open. He emerged in a polo shirt that fit like it had been tailored that morning, phone pressed to his ear, eyes on the screen. He walked past his daughter without a glance, past his wife, past Imani like she was wallpaper. If you've ever felt invisible in a room full of people, drop a comment below. This story gets darker before it gets lighter. Imani led Piper toward the staircase. The little girl's shoes squeaked against the polished floor. Behind them, Miranda snapped orders at someone about tablecloths. Ahead, through the second-floor hallway, Imani could see into Noah's room. The 8-year-old sat on his bed, controller in hand, but the game was paused. He was staring at the wall. She had been here for 6 months, half a year of this. The Caldwell estate sat behind iron gates in one of Georgia's wealthiest enclaves. 4 bedrooms, saltwater pool, security cameras on every corner. The kind of house that made people stop their cars and wonder what it was like inside. Imani knew. It was cold, not the temperature. The air itself felt expensive and untouchable, like everything had been staged for a magazine shoot that never ended. She hadn't grown up in places like this. She'd cleaned them. Her mother, Lorraine, had worked as a housekeeper in Atlanta's northern suburbs for 20 years. Imani remembered being 7, sitting in kitchen corners while her mother scrubbed floors in homes 3 times the size of their apartment. She remembered the way people smiled at Lorraine, but never asked her name. The way they left cash on counters instead of handing it to her. The way they talked about vacations and private schools while her mother emptied their trash. Imani had sworn she'd never do that kind of work. But caregiving was different, that's what she told herself. Kids needed her, kids saw her, adults didn't. At the top of the stairs, Noah appeared in his doorway. He wore a button-down shirt that looked stiff and uncomfortable. His dark hair was combed too neatly. Are we really not allowed downstairs? Imani crouched between both children, eye level. Your mom wants today to go perfectly. Sometimes that means staying out of the way. We're in the way, Piper's voice was small. No, baby, never. Imani touched the girl's cheek. You're never in the way, not to me. Noah's jaw tightened. He looked too old for 8. Dad didn't even say good morning. He's busy. He's always busy. Imani had no answer for that, because it was true. Preston Caldwell ran a commercial real estate firm that kept him traveling, networking, chasing deals that always seemed just out of reach. Miranda ran charity committees and social calendars with the same urgency other people reserved for emergencies. Both of them ran from the 2 people who needed them most. So Amani stayed. She set up a craft station in the playroom, helped Piper paint a butterfly with colors that bled together into mud, listened to Noah talk about a book he was reading, some fantasy series about kids who discovered they were more powerful than they knew. She nodded, asked questions, let him be heard. Downstairs, voices floated up through the vents. Laughter, the clink of silverware on expensive plates, the low hum of people performing wealth. Piper pressed her paint-covered hand onto construction paper. Do you have kids, Miss Amani? No, sweetheart. Do you want kids? Amani paused, brush in hand. The question landed heavier than it should have. Someday, maybe. You'd be a good mom. Piper said it so simply, like it was fact. Noah looked up from his book. Better than ours. The words hung in the air. Imani's chest tightened. She wanted to correct him, tell him his parents loved him, but the lie wouldn't come, because love without presence wasn't love, it was just obligation. Your parents are doing their best, she said instead. Noah's eyes were too knowing. No, they're not. A door slammed downstairs. Voices rose, not quite yelling but close. Miranda's tone sharpened. Preston's dropped to that low, clipped register he used when he was done pretending. Piper's face crumpled. Imani pulled her close, one arm around her, the other reaching for Noah. He resisted for a second, then leaned in. Both of them fit against her like they'd been doing this for years. You're safe, Imani whispered. Right here, you're safe. The argument faded. Footsteps moved toward the back of the house. The tension ebbed but didn't disappear. It never did in this house. It just waited. Later, after the kids finally settled into a movie, Imani stepped into her room. It was small, neat. A bed, a dresser, a window that overlooked the garden. She kept nothing personal on the walls. No photos, no decorations. It was temporary. Everything here was temporary. She pulled her phone from her pocket. 3 missed calls, all from the same number. She stared at the screen, thumb hovering, then locked it without calling back. Not yet. Not here. There were things these people didn't know about her. Things no one in this house could know, not because she was ashamed, but because timing mattered, and the moment wasn't right. She caught her reflection in the mirror above the dresser. Dark eyes, smooth skin, hair pulled back so tight it erased any softness. She barely recognized herself anymore. Somewhere between swallowing disrespect and putting kids to bed, she'd become someone who disappeared on purpose. Her phone buzzed. A text this time. Just checking in. Let me know when you're ready. She typed back quickly, soon. Downstairs, the brunch was winding down. Voices grew louder, looser. Someone laughed too hard at a joke that probably wasn't funny. Miranda's heels clicked across the floor in that frantic rhythm that meant she was managing, controlling, fixing. Imani exhaled slowly. This house looked perfect from the outside. Gates, cameras, wealth stacked on wealth, but inside it was falling apart one silent dinner at a time. And she was the only one holding the pieces. She didn't know how much longer she could keep doing this. Didn't know how much longer she should. The weight of being invisible was starting to crack something inside her she couldn't name. But she also couldn't leave. Not yet. Not until she knew the kids would be okay. Or until something forced her hand. Imani glanced at her phone one more time before setting it face down on the dresser. She had no idea that in 2 weeks, a sound would split the sky above this house, and everything she'd been quietly protecting would shatter in front of everyone who'd ever looked past her. Noah's scream tore through the house at 2 in the morning. Imani was already moving before she was fully awake, feet hitting the hardwood, muscle memory pulling her down the hall. The nightlight in his room cast long shadows across walls covered in posters of planets and scientists. He was sitting up in bed, chest heaving, eyes wide and wet. Hey, I'm here. She sat on the edge of his mattress, hand on his back. His t-shirt was damp with sweat. Same one. He nodded, gulping air. The nightmare was always the same. He was alone in the house, calling for his parents. No one answered. Every room was empty, every door locked. He couldn't get out. Nanny didn't tell him it wasn't just a dream. She stayed until his breathing evened out, until his eyes grew heavy again, until he finally slumped back against the pillow, half asleep, whispering, "Don't go." "I won't." She kept her promise until his breath turned deep and steady. Then she slipped out quietly, pulling the door almost closed. The hallway was dark, silent. Preston and Miranda's bedroom door was shut, no light underneath. They hadn't woken up. They never did. Nanny stood there for a moment, staring at that door, feeling something cold settle in her chest. The next morning, Piper refused to get dressed. "I don't like that one." She pointed at the outfit Miranda had laid out the night before, a pink dress with ruffles that looked like it belonged in a pageant. "Your mama picked it out special," Nanny said gently. "I don't care." Piper crossed her arms, lip trembling. "It's itchy, and I hate pink." Nanny crouched down, meeting her eyes. "What do you want to wear?" Piper pointed to a pair of leggings and a purple shirt with a dinosaur on it. "Done." The little girl's face lit up. She dressed quickly, then threw her arms around Nanny's neck. "You're my best friend." The words hit harder than they should have. Downstairs, Miranda was already in the kitchen, scrolling through her phone with one hand, coffee cup in the other. She looked up when Nanny and Piper entered, eyes narrowing immediately. "That's not what I said out." "She wanted to be comfortable," Nanny said. "I don't care what she wanted. We have standards." Miranda's gaze flicked to Piper, then back to Nanny. "Change her." Piper's shoulders curled inward. Nanny felt her jaw tighten. She kept her voice even. "She's 5, it's just preschool. It's about discipline, something you clearly don't understand." The air in the kitchen turned sharp. Nanny could feel Piper's small hand gripping the back of her dress. She wanted to say more, wanted to tell Miranda that discipline without love was just control, that her daughter needed to feel seen, not managed. But she didn't. Because this wasn't her house. These weren't her kids, and she needed this job. "I'll change her," Nanny said quietly. Miranda's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Good." Upstairs, Piper cried while Nanny helped her into the pink dress. "I'm sorry, baby," Nanny whispered, smoothing the fabric. "I'm so sorry." Preston barely looked at them during breakfast. He sat at the head of the table, tablet propped against his orange juice, swiping through emails. Noah asked him a question about a school project. Preston grunted, didn't look up. "Dad." "Not now, Noah." The boy's face fell. He stabbed at his eggs with his fork, jaw clenched. Nanny reached under the table and squeezed his knee. He didn't look at her, but his grip on the fork loosened. Miranda breezed through, grabbing her purse, already talking on her phone. She kissed the air near Piper's head without breaking stride. "Nanny, pickup is at 3. Don't be late." Then she was gone. Preston followed 5 minutes later. No goodbye, no eye contact, just the sound of his car starting in the driveway and fatting down the street. The house went quiet. Noah pushed his plate away. "Can we stay home today?" "You know we can't." "Why not?" "Because your parents would notice and that would be worse," Nanny thought. But she said, "Because school is important." "Nothing's important to them." Piper started crying again, softly, the kind of crying kids do when they're trying to be good but can't hold it in anymore. Nanny pulled them both close, right there in the kitchen, let them lean into her until the tears stopped. This was her life now, filling the gaps their parents left, being the steady hand when everything else shook, the soft voice in a house full of cold ones. She was more than a nanny here. She was the only adult who stayed. At school pickup, the other parents barely acknowledged her. They stood in clusters near the entrance, designer sunglasses, gym clothes that cost more than Imani's rent. When she pulled up in the Caldwell's second car, a modest SUV Miranda kept for errands, a woman in yoga pants glanced at her shoes. Old flats, comfortable, worn. The woman whispered something to her friend. Both of them smiled. Imani pretended not to notice. Piper ran out first, backpack bouncing. Noah trailed behind, quieter. Imani helped them into the car, buckled Piper's seatbelt, asked about their day. "We made clay animals," Piper said, holding up a lumpy blue shape. "It's an elephant." "It's beautiful." Noah said nothing. He stared out the window the whole ride home. Back at the house, Imani made snacks, helped with homework, listened to Piper's endless stories about recess and her friend Zara who could do a cartwheel. She let Noah sit in silence, knowing he'd talk when he was ready. Around 5, Miranda returned. She walked through the door like she was inspecting a hotel, eyes scanning, looking for flaws. Did Noah finish his reading log? Yes. Piper's folder. Signed and in her bag. Miranda nodded, already moving toward the stairs. "I need them bathed and in bed by 7. Preston's hosting a client dinner tonight. They need to stay upstairs." Again, the word slipped out before Imani could stop it. Miranda turned slowly. "Excuse me. They haven't seen you all day." "I'm aware of my schedule, thank you." Her tone was ice. "Do your job, Imani, I'll do mine." The conversation was over. That night, after baths and stories and tucking both kids in twice because Piper kept getting up for water, Imani sat in her room with the door cracked. She could hear voices downstairs. Preston's low rumble. A man's laugh she didn't recognize. The clink of glasses. Her phone buzzed. "Dinner tomorrow, I miss you." She stared at the message. Typed and deleted 3 different responses before finally sending. "Maybe this weekend." The reply came instantly. "You can't hide forever." She locked her phone and set it aside. Hiding wasn't the right word. She wasn't hiding, she was waiting. There was a difference. Downstairs, someone laughed too loud. A chair scraped. Footsteps moved toward the kitchen. Imani leaned back against her headboard and closed her eyes. She thought about Noah's nightmare, about Piper crying in that ridiculous pink dress, about the way Preston looked through his own children like they were ghosts. And she realized something that made her stomach turn. She wasn't just taking care of these kids. She was becoming the only stable thing in their entire world. The woman's name was Stephanie. Imani didn't know that at first. She only knew the look, the one that started at her shoes and traveled up slowly, taking in every detail, measuring, judging, categorizing. It happened during school pickup on a Thursday. Imani stood near the curb, waiting for Noah's class to be dismissed. Stephanie was part of the cluster of mothers who always arrived early, the ones who treated pickup like a social event. She wore white jeans that had never seen a stain and carried a purse that probably cost more than Imani's entire wardrobe. Stephanie's eyes landed on Imani, stayed there a beat too long. Then she turned to the woman next to her and said something behind her hand. Both of them looked at Imani. Both of them smiled. Imani felt heat crawl up her neck. She kept her expression neutral, eyes forward like she hadn't noticed, like she didn't care. But she had, and she did. When Noah finally emerged, Stephanie's daughter was with him. A blonde girl in a pristine uniform, backpack covered in expensive pins. She waved goodbye to Noah and ran toward her mother. Stephanie crouched down, all warmth and attention. "How was your day, sweetie?" The girl launched into a story about art class. Stephanie listened, asked questions, laughed. Imani watched, something bitter forming in her chest. "Ready?" she asked Noah quietly. He nodded, shoulders hunched. On the way to the car, Stephanie called out, "Excuse me." Imani turned. Stephanie approached with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You're Noah's nanny, right?" "Yes." Which agency are you with? Imani blinked. I'm not with an agency. I work directly for the family. Oh, Stephanie's smile tightened. How nice do you live in? Yes. That must be convenient. The word hung in the air, loaded with something Imani couldn't quite name. For them, I mean. It works well, Imani said evenly. Stephanie's eyes flicked to the SUV. Is that the car they gave you? It's the family car. Right, of course, another smile. Well, nice to meet you. She walked away before Imani could respond. Noah climbed into the backseat. I don't like her daughter. Why not? She's mean. She told everyone my parents are getting divorced. Imani's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Are kids talking about that? Everyone is. The drive home was quiet. Imani's mind raced. She wondered if Preston and Miranda knew, if they cared, if they had any idea what their constant fighting was doing to their son. When they pulled through the gates, Miranda's car was already in the driveway. Unusual. She rarely came home before 6. Inside, Miranda stood in the living room, arms crossed, face tight. We need to talk. Imani's pulse quickened. About what? A parent called me today, said you were rude at pickup. What? Stephanie Morrison. She said you had an attitude when she tried to make conversation. Imani's jaw dropped. I didn't. She's on the board of Noah's school. Her husband donates to half the programs there. Miranda's voice was sharp, controlled. We can't afford for you to make us look bad. I was polite. I answered her questions. Clearly not in a way that satisfied her. She asked which agency I was with, like I was. Imani stopped herself. Like you were what? Miranda's eyes narrowed. Nothing. No, say it. Imani's voice came out quieter than she intended, like I was someone she hired for the weekend. You're being dramatic. I'm not. Miranda stepped closer. Listen to me very carefully. You represent this family when you're out in public. That means you smile, you're polite, you make us look good. I don't care if someone asks you to juggle or turn cartwheels. You do it with grace. Understood? Imani's throat felt tight. Understood. Good. Miranda turned toward the stairs. Dinner's at 6. The kids eat in the kitchen tonight. Preston has a headache. She disappeared upstairs. Noah stood in the doorway to the living room. He'd heard everything. Imani forced a smile. You hungry? He didn't smile back. You didn't do anything wrong. I know, baby. Then why did you say you understood? Because I need this job. Because I can't leave you yet. Because the world isn't fair and sometimes you have to swallow things that taste like poison. But she couldn't say any of that. So she just pulled him into a hug and whispered, sometimes we do things we don't want to do to protect the people we love. He held on tight. Over the next week, it got worse. At the grocery store, a woman saw Imani with Piper and asked if she spoke English. Imani said yes. The woman looked surprised. Oh, good. Some of the help around here doesn't. At the park, another mother assumed Imani was the housekeeper. When Imani corrected her, the woman laughed like it was a funny mistake. At a school event, a father asked how much the Caldwells paid her. Just asked, like it was a normal question, like her salary was public information. Each time Imani smiled. Each time she swallowed the humiliation. Each time she told herself it didn't matter. But it did. It mattered when Piper asked why people talked to her differently than they talked to other moms. It mattered when Noah started noticing the way adults looked past Imani like she wasn't there. It mattered when she caught her reflection in the rearview mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. She wasn't just invisible in this world. She was a punchline. The poor nanny, the help, the one they could talk around and through and over because she didn't count. Except she did count. And soon, everyone would know exactly how much. On Friday, Imani's phone buzzed during Piper's nap. She glanced at the screen. "We need to talk. Call me when you can." She stepped into her room and closed the door. The conversation was short, direct, the kind that shifts everything. When she hung up, her hands were shaking. Not from fear. From something else. Something that felt a lot like relief. Because she'd been patient long enough. And the truth was coming, whether this house was ready or not. The townhouse sat on a tree-lined street, 20 minutes from the Caldwell estate. Imani pulled into the driveway just after 9 on Saturday morning. The garage door opened smoothly. Inside, her car sat exactly where she'd left it 3 weeks ago. A sleek black sedan, clean, untouched. She didn't drive it anymore. Didn't need to. The Caldwells provided transportation, and showing up in a car like this would raise questions she wasn't ready to answer. Not yet. She walked through the side door into the kitchen. Everything was exactly as she'd left it. Clean counters, empty sink, a single coffee mug in the dish rack. The space felt hollow, like a hotel room between guests. This wasn't home. Not really. It was just the place she kept the parts of her life that didn't fit at the Caldwells. Her phone buzzed. She ignored it. In the bedroom, she opened the closet. Rows of clothes she never wore anymore. Dresses for events she didn't attend. Heels that hurt her feet. A whole wardrobe for a version of herself she'd put on hold. She pulled a small box from the top shelf. Inside, documents, legal paperwork, account statements, plans she'd been building for 2 years. Her mother's face flashed in her mind. Lorraine, 63, still cleaning houses because retirement wasn't an option when you'd spent your whole life one missed paycheck away from disaster. Imani was changing that. The legal trust was almost complete. A fund that would cover her mother's housing, medical care, everything. So Lorraine could finally stop scrubbing someone else's floors and rest. But that wasn't all. The nonprofit was the bigger piece, the part that mattered more than money. She'd been designing it for months, a program for kids in foster care, support systems, mentorship, resources, the kind of help she'd watched countless children go without. She wanted to build it right, which meant understanding the system from the inside, seeing how families worked, how caregivers were treated, what kids really needed when the adults around them failed. That's why she'd taken the nanny job. Not because she had to, because she chose to. But explaining that to people like Miranda Caldwell would sound insane, so she didn't. She let them think what they wanted, let them see a poor girl who needed work, let them look past her. Because invisibility had its advantages. When you were invisible, people said things they shouldn't, revealed who they really were, showed you exactly how they treated people they thought didn't matter. And Imani had been taking notes. She locked the box and returned it to the shelf. Her phone buzzed again. This time she looked. "How much longer?" She smiled, typed back, "Soon, I promise." The reply was immediate. "I'm running out of patience." "I know. You're better than this, Imani." She stared at the message. Her chest tightened. He wasn't wrong. She was better than this. Better than swallowing insults from people like Stephanie Morrison. Better than being talked down to by Miranda. Better than watching Preston ignore his kids day after day and pretending it was fine. But leaving now would mean abandoning Noah and Piper. And she couldn't do that. Not until she knew they'd be okay. She locked the townhouse and drove back to the estate in the SUV. The contrast always hit her, leaving a place that was hers, returning to a place where she didn't even have a key to the front door. When she pulled through the gates, Preston's car was gone, Miranda's too. A note on the kitchen counter said they'd be back by evening, dinner with friends. The kids were upstairs with the teenager from next door, a girl who babysat sometimes when Imani had a day off. She was sweet but distracted, scrolling through her phone while Piper played alone. I'm back, Imani said gently. The girl looked up relieved. Oh good, they've been asking for you. Noah appeared in the doorway, his face lit up. You're here. I'm here. Piper ran down the hall and threw herself into Imani's arms. I missed you. I missed you too, baby. The sitter left quickly. The house settled into its usual quiet. Imani made lunch, listened to Piper's story about a butterfly she saw in the garden, watched Noah build an elaborate structure out of blocks, focused and calm in a way he never was around his parents. This was the part that made it hard. The part where she realized she wasn't just a job to them. She was the person they ran to, the person they trusted, the person who made them feel safe. And that responsibility felt heavier than anything she'd ever carried. Later, while the kids watched a movie, Imani stepped onto the back patio. The pool glittered in the afternoon sun. The yard stretched out, perfectly landscaped, cameras positioned at every angle. She thought about the helicopter. It had been Adrian's idea, a dramatic entrance, the kind of moment that would force everyone to see her, really see her. She'd said no at first, too much, too public. But he'd pushed back, gently, the way he always did. You're letting them define you, he'd said. When are you going to define yourself? She didn't have an answer then. But she was getting close to one now. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother. How are the kids? Good, they're good. And you? Imani hesitated. Her mother knew about the townhouse, the plans, the nonprofit, but she didn't know about the daily humiliations, the comments. The way Imani went to bed, every night feeling smaller than she had that morning. I'm okay. You don't sound okay. I will be. Her mother's reply took longer. You don't have to prove anything, baby. Not to them, not to anyone. Imani's eyes stung. But she did have to prove something. Not to the Caldwells. To herself. That she could endure this. That she could stay invisible long enough to finish what she started. That she could put these kids first even when it cost her dignity. She just didn't know how much longer she could hold on. Inside, Piper called her name. Imani wiped her eyes and went back in. That night after both kids were asleep, she sat in her room and opened her laptop. The nonprofit's draft website stared back at her, unfinished, waiting. She clicked through pages, mission statement, programs, donor information. It was almost ready. She was almost ready. Her phone lit up with a message. 2 weeks, that's all I'm giving you. Then I'm coming whether you're ready or not. Imani stared at the screen. 2 weeks. 14 days. And then everything would change. She typed slowly, okay. The reply came fast, I love you, but this ends soon. I know. She set the phone down and looked around her small room, at the blank walls, the temporary life she'd built here. Soon, none of this would matter. Soon, everyone would know the truth. And the people who'd spent months looking past her would finally have to look her in the eye. She just hoped she'd still recognize herself when they did. The tent was white and enormous. It swallowed half the backyard, poles stretching toward a sky so blue it looked fake. Imani stood in the kitchen, watching through the window as staff rushed back and forth with flowers, linens, chairs that cost more to rent than most people made in a week. Miranda's charity brunch, the event she'd been planning for 2 months, the one that mattered more than anything else because the right people would be here, the ones who wrote checks, the ones who decided who belonged. I need you to stay inside today. Imani turned. Miranda stood in the doorway already dressed, white pantsuit, hair perfect, makeup that made her look 10 years younger. The whole day, Imani asked. Yes, the children need to be kept upstairs, quiet, out of sight. They wanted to help set up. This isn't a playdate, Imani. This is important. Miranda's voice was sharp. Guests will be arriving at 11. I don't want to see the kids, I don't want to hear them, and I definitely don't want you walking around in front of my donors." The words landed like a slap. Imani kept her face neutral. "Understood." "Good." Miranda's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, already moving toward the door. "Oh, and make sure they eat lunch upstairs. The caterer is only preparing for adults." She was gone before Imani could respond. Upstairs, Noah sat on his bedroom floor, still in pajamas. "Are we allowed downstairs yet?" "Not today." "Why not?" "Because your mother is ashamed of you. Because this party matters more than you do. Because she'd rather pretend she doesn't have kids than let her friends see the mess she's made of parenting." But Imani couldn't say that. "It's a grown-up event," she said instead. "We're always in the way." His voice was flat, empty. "You're not in the way. Then why do we always have to hide?" Piper appeared in the doorway, dragging her stuffed elephant. "I'm hungry." Imani made pancakes in the upstairs kitchenette. It was small, barely functional, the kind of space rich people installed so staff didn't have to use the real kitchen. She let Piper pour chocolate chips into the batter. Let Noah crack the eggs even though he got shell in the bowl. Through the window she could see the tent. People were arriving. Women in pastels and pearls, men in blazers, everyone smiling, everyone performing. The music started just before noon, something classical, strings and piano, the kind of music that made you whisper. "Can we look?" Piper pressed her face against the glass. "Just for a minute." They stood there together watching. A waiter passed with a tray of champagne. A woman laughed too loud. Someone's dog, a tiny white thing with a bow in its fur, trotted across the grass. "Why do they get to have a party?" Piper asked. "Because they're raising money for charity." "What's charity?" "Helping people who need help." Noah's voice was bitter. "We need help." Imani pulled him close. "I know, baby." The afternoon dragged. Imani set up crafts, played games, read stories, anything to keep them distracted. But the noise from downstairs seeped through the floors. Laughter, clinking glasses, the hum of people enjoying themselves. Around 2, the music shifted, got louder, more upbeat. Piper started crying. "I want to go outside." "We can't, sweetie." "Why not? It's our house." I know it is." "Then why can't we go?" Imani had no good answer. She was still trying to calm Piper down when she heard it. Shouting. Not happy shouting, the other kind. She moved to the window. Below, near the pool, 2 women stood face to face. One of them was gesturing wildly. The other had her arms crossed, face red. The music stopped. People turned. And then Piper bolted. She was fast, out the door before Imani could grab her, down the hallway, footsteps pounding on the stairs. "Piper, wait." Imani ran after her, Noah close behind. They reached the main floor just as Piper burst through the French doors onto the patio. The crying had gotten worse, full sobs now, the kind that shook her whole body. Every head turned. Miranda appeared from somewhere near the tent, face white. "What is she doing out here?" "I'm sorry, Get her inside now." But Piper wasn't listening. She was looking for Noah. "Where's Noah? I can't find Noah." "I'm right here." He stepped onto the patio, pale but steady. Piper ran to him, threw her arms around his waist. Cameras came out, phones lifted, someone was recording. Imani moved toward them, but Miranda grabbed her arm, hard. "You had one job." She ran before I could. "I don't care, this is unacceptable." Imani pulled her arm free and walked past her, straight to the kids. She crouched down between them, blocking the cameras, the stares, the judgment. "Hey, look at me." Piper's face was soaked. "I heard yelling. I thought someone was hurting Noah." "No one's hurting anyone." "But they were fighting." "Grown-ups fight sometimes. It doesn't mean anything bad is happening." Noah's voice was small. Yes, it does. Imani's chest ached. She looked up at the crowd, at the people pretending not to stare, at Miranda, whose face had gone from white to red. She wanted to scream, wanted to tell every single person here what kind of parents the Caldwells really were, how these kids spent most of their lives invisible, how they were shoved aside, ignored, treated like inconveniences. But she didn't. She just wrapped her arms around both of them and stood. Let's go inside. She walked them back through the French doors, through the living room, up the stairs. Behind her, the music started again. Someone laughed. The party continued like nothing had happened. In Noah's room, Imani sat on the floor with both kids curled against her. Neither of them spoke. They just breathed, held on. After a while, Piper whispered, "Are we bad?" "No, baby, you're not bad." "Then why doesn't Mommy want us at her party?" Imani closed her eyes. "I don't know." "Do you think she loves us?" The question broke something inside her. Because she didn't know the answer. And even if she did, she couldn't say it. Downstairs, the brunch went on for another 2 hours. When it finally ended, when the last guest left and the caterers started breaking down tables, Miranda came upstairs. She didn't knock. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed, eyes hard. "You embarrassed us today." Imani stood slowly. She was scared. "I don't care. I told you to keep them upstairs." "She's 5. And you're the nanny. This isn't your house. These aren't your kids. You don't get to decide when they come and go." Miranda's voice was ice. "Know your role, Imani." The words hung in the air. Know your role. Like she was a servant, like she was beneath them, like everything she did for this family meant nothing. Imani looked at Noah and Piper, both watching with wide, scared eyes. And she realized something that made her blood go cold. They were learning this. Learning that people like Imani didn't deserve respect, that staff were less than, that you could talk down to someone and it didn't matter as long as they needed the paycheck. They were learning how to be cruel without even knowing it. And if Imani stayed silent, she'd be teaching them. But she couldn't leave. Not yet. So she just nodded. "I understand." Miranda turned and walked away. When the door closed, Imani sat back down. Noah crawled into her lap even though he was too big for it. Piper pressed against her side. "I'm sorry," Noah whispered. "You have nothing to be sorry for." "Are you going to leave?" "No, baby, I'm not leaving." "Promise." She held them tighter. "I promise." But even as she said it, she knew the promise had an expiration date. Because she couldn't keep doing this. Couldn't keep swallowing the humiliation. Couldn't keep watching these kids absorb poison and pretend it was normal. Something had to change. And soon it would. 2 weeks, Adrian had said. Imani pulled out her phone after the kids finally fell asleep. She typed slowly, "Make it 1." The response came immediately, "You're sure?" Her hands shook. But her answer was steady. "Yes." Imani's hands wouldn't stop shaking. She sat on the edge of her bed, phone screen dark, the weight of what she'd just agreed to pressing down on her chest like concrete. 1 week, 7 days. Then Adrian would come and everything she'd been hiding would explode into the open. A knock at the door made her jump. "Miss Imani," Noah's voice, small, scared. She opened the door. He stood there in his pajamas, face blotchy from crying. "I can't sleep." She pulled him inside, sat him on the bed. "What's wrong?" "I heard Mom and Dad fighting, really bad this time." His voice cracked. "Dad said he's done. Mom threw something, glass broke." Imani's stomach twisted. "Where are they now?" "Dad left. Mom's in her room." She wanted to go downstairs. Wanted to check on Miranda even though the woman had treated her like trash just hours ago. But Noah needed her more. "Stay here tonight," she whispered. Really? Really? He crawled under her blanket, curled into a ball. She lay beside him, one hand on his back, feeling each shaky breath until he finally drifted off. But Amani didn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling, mind racing. This house was falling apart. The kids were caught in the middle, and she was the only thing keeping them from completely breaking. But in 1 week, she wouldn't be here anymore. What happened to them then? The question haunted her until sunrise. Morning came gray and heavy. Preston's car was still gone. Miranda's bedroom door stayed closed. The house felt like a tomb. Imani got the kids ready in silence, made breakfast, packed lunches, drove them to school with the radio off because nobody felt like talking. At pickup, Stephanie was waiting near the entrance. She saw Imani and smiled. That same fake smile from before. "I heard about yesterday," she said, voice dripping with false sympathy. "The whole scene at the brunch. That must have been so embarrassing for Miranda." Imani kept walking. "I mean, children do need structure, boundaries," Stephanie followed. "Maybe that's something you should work on." Imani stopped, turned slowly. "Excuse me. I'm just saying, as someone who manages staff myself, consistency is key. You can't let them run wild." Something inside Imani snapped. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet crack like ice breaking under pressure. "Those kids," she said softly, "are the kindest, smartest, most emotionally aware children I've ever met. And they're that way despite their parents, not because of them." Stephanie's smile died. "So maybe before you talk about structure and boundaries, ask yourself why your daughter tells Noah his family is falling apart. Ask yourself, what kind of adult teaches a child to be cruel?" Imani walked away before Stephanie could respond. Noah was waiting by the car, eyes wide. "Did you just yell at Mrs. Morrison?" "I didn't yell." "You stood up to her." "Yeah, I did." He grinned, actually grinned. "That was awesome." But when they got home, Preston's car was in the driveway. Both cars. He and Miranda were inside, together, waiting. Imani's pulse quickened. She sent the kids upstairs, told them to play quietly. Then she walked into the living room where Preston and Miranda sat on opposite ends of the couch, a canyon of space between them. "Sit down," Preston said. She didn't. "Stephanie Morrison called," Miranda said, voice tight. "She said you were inappropriate, hostile." "I wasn't hostile." "You confronted her in front of other parents." "She insulted your children." Preston's jaw clenched. "That's not the point." "Then what is?" "The point," Miranda said, standing, "is that you're crossing lines. You're forgetting your place. First the brunch, now this." Imani felt something hot rise in her throat. "My place?" "Yes, your place." "And where exactly is that, Miranda? In the kitchen, in the background, invisible." "You're the help, Imani. That's reality." The words landed like a punch. Preston cleared his throat. "We think it's best if we make a change." Time stopped. "You're firing me." "We're letting you go," Preston corrected, like the phrasing made it better. 2 weeks' notice. We'll pay you through the end of the month. We'll even write a recommendation letter." Miranda's face was stone. "It's just not working out." Imani looked between them. At their expensive clothes and cold eyes and complete lack of awareness about what they were doing to their own children. And she laughed. Not a happy laugh, a bitter one. "You're right," she said quietly. "It's not working out, because I actually care about Noah and Piper, and you two are teaching them that people like me don't matter." "That's not." "Yes, it is." Imani's voice was steady now, calm. "You treat me like I'm beneath you, you talk down to me, you hide your kids from your friends like they're shameful, and those kids are watching. They're learning." Preston stood. "I think you should leave now." "I'll leave when I'm ready." "This is our house. And those are your children." Imani pointed upstairs. Have you even asked them how they're doing? Have you noticed Noah's nightmares? Have you seen Piper cry herself to sleep? Silence. Neither of them answered. Because they didn't know. They had no idea. Imani grabbed her purse. I'll stay through the week for them, not for you. She walked upstairs, heart pounding, hands still shaking but her head finally clear. In her room, she pulled out her phone. Typed one word. Now. Adrian's response came instantly. I'll handle it, trust me. She sat on the bed, staring at the walls of this tiny room that had been her prison for 6 months. 5 more days. Then the helicopter would come. Then everyone would see. And Preston and Miranda would finally understand exactly who they'd been talking down to all this time. Imani closed her eyes and for the first time in months, she smiled. The sound started as a whisper. Distant, rhythmic, like thunder rolling in from somewhere far away. Imani was in the kitchen, making lunch for a business partner Preston had invited over. Some important meeting. Another chance for him to impress someone. Another performance. She'd barely slept in 3 days. The countdown felt like a bomb ticking in her chest. 72 hours, then 48, then 24. Now it was here. The noise grew louder. Not thunder. Mechanical pulsing. Imani's hands stilled on the cutting board. In the dining room, Preston sat across from a man in a gray suit. Charts spread across the table. Numbers, projections, the kind of meeting that meant everything to Preston. The man's name was listed on the place card Miranda had set out. Adrian Cole. Preston had been chasing this partnership for months. Emails, calls, third-party introductions. He'd finally gotten the meeting, finally gotten Adrian to agree to lunch at his house. He had no idea who Adrian really was. The sound grew deafening. Glasses rattled on the table, the chandelier swayed. Preston looked up, confused. What the? The windows shook. Outside, people appeared from nowhere. Neighbors, gardeners, the mailman, all of them staring up at the sky, hands shielding their eyes. Miranda burst through the front door, still in her tennis whites, face pale. Preston, what's happening? He stood, moving toward the window. The noise was directly overhead now, a roar that drowned out everything else. And then it appeared. Black sleek, cutting through the blue sky like a blade. A helicopter. It descended slowly, rotors whipping the air, sending leaves and debris scattering across the perfectly manicured lawn. The landing gear touched down on the grass beyond the pool. The engine wound down but didn't cut off completely. The side door opened. A man stepped out. Tall, dark suit, calm, like he landed helicopters in people's backyards every day. Adrian. He walked across the lawn with the kind of confidence that came from never doubting you belonged somewhere. Staff in white shirts rushed out, confused, panicking. Security appeared, hands on radios, unsure what to do. Adrian walked past all of them. Straight toward the house. Preston's face had gone white. That's Adrian Cole. Who? Miranda grabbed his arm. The investor, the one I've been trying to meet with for months. Preston's voice cracked. Why is he landing a helicopter in our yard? Adrian reached the French doors, opened them without knocking. Stepped inside. His eyes swept the room, past Preston, past Miranda, past the charts and half-eaten lunch and expensive furniture. They landed on Imani. And he smiled. Sorry I'm late, he said, voice low and steady. I couldn't wait anymore. The room went silent. He crossed to where she stood in the kitchen doorway, reached for her hand. She took it. And then he dropped to one knee. Miranda gasped. Preston stumbled backward. Imani felt every eye in the room lock on her. I know we said 1 week, Adrian murmured, looking up at her. But I'm done watching you shrink yourself for people who don't deserve you." Her throat tightened. He stood, still holding her hand, and turned to face the room. "I'm here to see my fiancé." The word hung in the air like a grenade. Miranda's mouth opened, closed. "Fiancé." Preston's face had gone from white to red. "You're engaged to her." "To a Manny," Adrian corrected, voice sharp. "Yes. But she's the nanny." "She chose to work as a nanny," Adrian said evenly. "While finishing something personal, I respected that choice, but I won't stand by while she's disrespected." Miranda looked like she'd been slapped. "We didn't." "You did." Adrian's tone was calm but deadly. "I've heard the stories, the comments, the way you treat her like she's invisible." He paused. "She's not." Preston found his voice. "Mr. Cole, I think there's been a misunderstanding." "There hasn't." Adrian pulled a folder from inside his jacket, set it on the table. "This was supposed to be a partnership discussion, but I don't work with people who treat others as less than." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying you don't qualify." The words landed like a slap. Preston grabbed the folder, opened it. His hands shook as he read. "You're pulling the deal." "I never agreed to a deal. I came to see who you really were." Adrian's eyes were ice. "Now I know." Miranda's voice was a whisper. "This can't be happening." But it was. Outside, more people had gathered. Neighbors filming on their phones. Someone's gardener standing frozen with hedge trimmers. The helicopter's rotors still spinning slowly, blades cutting the air. Imani stood completely still, hand in Adrian's, feeling the weight of 6 months lift off her shoulders all at once. Noah appeared at the top of the stairs, then Piper, both of them staring down at the scene below. "Miss Imani," Noah's voice was small. She looked up at him. "Come here, baby." They ran down the stairs, crashed into her. She wrapped her free arm around both of them while Adrian stepped back to give them space. "What's happening?" Piper whispered. "Something good," Imani said. "Something really good." Preston was still staring at the folder like it might change if he looked long enough. Miranda had sunk into a chair, face in her hands. Adrian checked his watch. "We should go." "Go where?" Noah asked. Imani crouched down between them. "I need to talk to you both, but not here, okay?" They nodded. She stood, meeting Adrian's eyes. He nodded toward the door. As they walked toward the French doors, Preston finally found his voice. "Wait." Imani turned. He looked small suddenly, defeated. "The kids need parents who actually see them," Imani finished. "Not a nanny to raise them while you pretend they don't exist." Miranda's head snapped up. "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" Imani's voice was quiet but firm. "When's the last time you asked Noah about his nightmares? When's the last time you let Piper choose her own clothes? When's the last time either of you put them first?" Silence. Imani took a breath. "I'll be back to say goodbye properly, but right now I need air." She walked out the French doors, kids on either side, Adrian behind her. The helicopter sat on the lawn like a statement, like proof, like everything Preston and Miranda had spent months denying made solid and real. People were still watching, still filming. Someone would post this online within the hour. The story would spread. The charity circles Miranda moved in would hear. The business contacts Preston needed would know. The poor nanny wasn't poor at all. And the powerful couple had just lost everything. Adrian helped Noah into the helicopter first, then Piper. Both kids stared at everything with wide eyes. The leather seats, the cockpit, the view through the windows of their house getting smaller below. Imani sat between them, one arm around each. "Where are we going?" Noah asked. "Just for a ride," Adrian said from across the cabin. "I thought you two deserved to see the city from up here." Piper pressed her face to the window. "Is this real?" "Very real, sweetheart." The helicopter lifted smoothly. Below, the Caldwell estate shrank to the size of a dollhouse. Imani could see Preston and Miranda standing on the patio, looking up, could see the neighbors still gathered, could see the whole perfect, poisonous world she'd been living in reduced to something small and distant. Noah turned to her. "You're really engaged?" "Yes." "Why didn't you tell us?" Imani touched his face. "Because I wanted to finish what I came here to do first." "What did you come to do?" "Understand, learn, see how families really work when no one's performing." She looked at Adrian. "And make sure I could help kids like you." "We don't need help," Piper said quietly. "We have you." The words cracked Imani's heart open. "You do have me, but not as your nanny anymore." Noah's eyes filled. "You're leaving." "I have to, but that doesn't mean I'm abandoning you." She squeezed his hand. "It means I'm going to fight for kids like you in a bigger way." Adrian leaned forward. "Imani's building something important, a program for children who need advocates, people who will fight for them when their parents can't or won't." "Like a superhero," Piper whispered. Imani smiled through tears. "Something like that." The helicopter circled over downtown Atlanta. Glass towers caught the sun. Traffic moved like blood through veins far below. The city sprawled in every direction, full of people and stories and lives invisible to each other. "Can I tell you both something?" Imani asked. They nodded. "Being rich doesn't make you better than anyone. Being poor doesn't make you less. What matters is how you treat people when you think no one's watching. That's where you see who someone really is." Noah was quiet for a moment. Then, "Mom and Dad failed that test, didn't they?" Imani didn't answer directly. "They're trying their best with what they know, but their best isn't good enough for you too, and that's not your fault." "Will they get divorced?" Piper asked. "I don't know, baby." "Will we be okay?" Imani pulled her close. "You will, I promise you will." The helicopter turned back toward the estate. As they descended, Imani could see cars in the driveway now, more than before. Miranda's friends maybe, or Preston's business associates, people coming to see the wreckage. They landed softly on the lawn. Adrian opened the door. "Ready?" Imani nodded. They walked back across the grass, kids between them, toward the house that had been Imani's prison and the children's lonely palace. Inside, the living room was full. Miranda's sister, Preston's business partner, two women from the charity board, all of them starring as Imani walked in. Preston stood by the fireplace, tie loosened, face gray. Miranda sat on the couch, mascara streaked, hands trembling. Everyone turned when Adrian entered. He didn't introduce himself. Didn't need to. His presence was introduction enough. "I'll make this simple," he said. "Imani has been working here while building a nonprofit for foster children. She wanted to understand the system from inside a family structure. She chose this job deliberately." Miranda's voice was hoarse. "Why?" "Because she believes caregivers deserve dignity," Adrian said. "And she wanted to see how families treat the people who raise their children when they think those people don't matter." Preston flinched. "The townhouse you probably assumed she couldn't afford. She owns it. The car she stopped driving, paid off. The weekend she disappeared. She was finalizing a legal trust for her mother and designing programs that will help thousands of kids." One of the charity board women whispered something to her friend. Adrian continued, calm and relentless. "She's not poor. She's purposeful. And you treated her like she was beneath you because you couldn't imagine someone choosing humility over ego." Miranda's face crumpled. "We didn't know." "You didn't ask," Imani cut in quietly. "You assumed, and you taught your children to assume. That's worse than not knowing." Preston stepped forward. "If we'd known who you really were." "You would have treated me differently," Imani finished. "Exactly, that's the problem." The room went silent. Noah's hand tightened in Imani's. Adrian checked his watch. The partnership you wanted, Preston, it's not happening. I don't work with people who measure worth by bank accounts. And Miranda, the charity board you sit on, they'll hear about this, all of it. Miranda's sister started to protest, but Adrian raised a hand. I'm not threatening you. I'm stating facts. The video's already online. Your neighbors filmed everything. By tomorrow, everyone in your social circle will know you fired the woman who loved your kids because she wasn't rich enough for your image. Preston's voice was barely a whisper. What do you want from us? Nothing, Adrian said. You have nothing I want. He turned to Nanny, ready. She looked at the kids. Can I have a few minutes with them? Of course. Imani led Noah and Piper upstairs one last time, to the playroom where they'd spent countless hours, where she'd wiped tears and solved problems and made them feel seen. She sat them down on the floor. I need you to remember something, she said. You are not your parents' mistakes. You are not this house or this money or any of it. You're Noah and Piper. You're smart and kind and strong. I don't feel strong, Noah whispered. You are. You've survived this long in a house that forgot to love you properly. That takes incredible strength. Piper climbed into her lap. Don't go. I have to, but I'm going to check on you. And when you're older, if you want to help me with the nonprofit, there's a place for you. Really? Really? She held them until they stopped crying, until they could breathe again, until she knew they'd be okay. When she came back downstairs, the living room had cleared except for Preston and Miranda. Preston stood. I'm sorry. I know. Can we fix this? Imani looked at him for a long moment. Not with me, but maybe with them. She nodded upstairs. If you actually try. Miranda wiped her eyes. What do we do? Therapy, family therapy, and actually show up for your kids, not for appearances for them. Will you tell people? I'll tell the truth, Imani said. What you do with it is up to you. Adrian appeared at her side. Time to go. She walked to the door, paused, looked back. Power doesn't announce itself, she said quietly. And the people you overlook might be choosing patience, not weakness. Remember that. Then she walked out. Into the helicopter. Into the sky. Into the life she'd been building all along. The nonprofit's office sat in a converted warehouse in East Atlanta. Imani stood in the center of the open space, blueprints spread across a folding table, vision finally taking physical shape. 20 desks, meeting rooms, a kid's area with books and art supplies. Everything she'd been planning for 2 years. Adrian leaned against the doorframe, watching her. You're smiling. I know. First time in months. She looked up. First time I've felt like myself in months. He crossed to her, wrapped his arms around her waist. I hated watching you there, watching them diminish you. I needed to see it, needed to understand. She turned in his arms. Most nannies don't have what I have. They can't just leave. They can't fight back. They need this job to survive. And now you're going to fight for them. Yes. The door opened. A woman entered, mid-50s, gray locks pulled back, eyes sharp with intelligence. Imani's mother, Lorraine. Baby girl. She pulled Imani into a hug that smelled like cocoa butter and home. I saw the video. Everyone saw the video. Good, those people needed exposing. Lorraine pulled back, studying her daughter's face. You okay? Yeah, Mama, I'm okay. And the kids? Imani's smile faded. I don't know, I hope they will be. Lorraine nodded slowly. You did what you could. Sometimes that has to be enough. Over the next week, the story spread exactly like Adrian had predicted. The video went viral. News outlets picked it up. Think pieces appeared about class, dignity, and how America treats domestic workers. The Caldwells stayed silent. But Imani heard through connections that they'd started family therapy, that Miranda had stepped down from 2 charity boards, that Preston had taken time off work. Whether it would last, she didn't know. On Friday, a package arrived at the nonprofit office. Inside, 2 drawings, one from Noah, one from Piper, stick figures holding hands, a note in Noah's careful handwriting. "Thank you for seeing us, we won't forget." Imani hung them on the office wall. That weekend, she and Adrian drove out to Lorraine's new place, a small house in a quiet neighborhood, paid off, safe. The trust Imani had built covered everything. Her mother would never clean another stranger's toilet. They sat on the porch, drinking sweet tea, watching the sun set. "You changed their lives," Lorraine said. "The Caldwells. The kids, Noah and Piper. They'll remember you treated them like they mattered when their own parents didn't." "I just loved them." "Exactly. That's revolutionary when you're a child being raised without it." Lorraine squeezed her hand. "And this nonprofit you're building, that's going to change thousands more." Imani leaned her head on her mother's shoulder. "I couldn't have done any of it without you showing me how." "How to what?" "How to keep your dignity when the world tells you you're invisible. How to choose patience over bitterness. How to know your worth even when no one else sees it." Lorraine's eyes filled. "You always saw it, baby. I just held the mirror." The nonprofit launched 2 months later. The name was simple: Seen. Because every child deserved to be seen. Every caregiver deserved dignity. Every invisible person deserved to be recognized as human. The media covered it, donors contributed, families reached out. And one afternoon, 6 months after the helicopter landing, Imani's phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. "Hello?" "Miss Imani," a woman's voice, shaky, familiar. "Miranda." Silence, then, "I know I have no right to call, but I needed to tell you something." Imani waited. "You were right about everything. We were terrible parents, terrible people, and we're trying to change. It's hard, it's so hard. But the kids are talking to us now, really talking. And it's because you showed them what love looks like." Imani's throat tightened. "How are they?" "Better, still hurt, still angry sometimes, but better." Miranda's voice cracked. "I'm calling because Noah asked me to. He wants to know if he can volunteer at your nonprofit when he's older." Tears slipped down Imani's face. "Tell him yes. Tell him absolutely yes. Thank you for not giving up on them. I never could." After she hung up, Imani stood in the office surrounded by programs she'd built and lives she'd already touched. The Caldwells would never be perfect, neither would she, but maybe that wasn't the point. Maybe the point was choosing to see people, to honor dignity, to recognize that worth wasn't measured in bank accounts or job titles. It was measured in how you treated someone when you thought they didn't matter. Because everyone mattered. Everyone. And sometimes it took a helicopter to prove it. 3 years later, Imani stood at a podium in a hotel ballroom. 200 people filled the seats, donors, advocates, families whose lives had been changed by the work Seen was doing. She wore a simple navy dress, hair in loose curls now natural and free, no bun, no uniform, just herself. "When I started this," she said, "I didn't know if it would work. I just knew it had to exist, because I'd seen too many caregivers treated as less than, too many children raised by people their families looked through instead of at." Faces watched her, listened. The truth is, we all have blind spots. We all make assumptions about people based on appearances, job titles, income. We all have moments where we forget that every person we meet is carrying a story we know nothing about. She paused. "I worked as a nanny for 6 months in a house that forgot to see me. But those 6 months taught me everything I needed to know about building this nonprofit. They taught me what kids need when adults fail them. They taught me how caregivers carry impossible weight with grace. And they taught me that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is choose humility when you could choose pride. Applause rippled through the room. After the speech, people lined up to talk to her, thank her, share their stories. And then she saw them. Noah and Piper, older now. Noah was 11, tall and serious. Piper was 8, bright-eyed and confident. Behind them, Miranda and Preston, different somehow, quieter, humbler. Noah hugged Nanny first, hard. You were amazing. You came. Of course we came. Piper squeezed in. We've been following everything you do. Miranda stepped forward hesitantly. Thank you for inviting us. I wasn't sure you would. You're trying, Nanny said. That matters. Preston's eyes were wet. We heard you're getting married next month. We are. The kids wanted to give you something. He handed her an envelope. Inside a drawing, all 4 of them, the Caldwells, but labeled differently now. Our family, before and after Miss Manny. Before, stick figures standing apart, no hands touching. After, stick figures in a circle, hands linked, smiling. Manny pressed the paper to her chest. You saved us, Miranda whispered, all of us. I just loved your kids. You saved yourselves. They talked for a few more minutes, made promises to stay in touch. Then the Caldwells left, and Manny stood alone in the emptying ballroom. Adrian appeared beside her, ready to go home. Yeah. In the car, he glanced at the drawing. That's beautiful. It is. You changed their whole family. They changed themselves. I just showed them it was possible. She folded the paper carefully. Besides, they changed me too. How? They reminded me that power isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, patient, waiting for the right moment. He smiled, like helicopters. Like helicopters. They drove through Atlanta as the sun set, past neighborhoods rich and poor, houses big and small, lives playing out behind every window. Somewhere, a child was being raised by someone their family looked past. Somewhere, a caregiver was swallowing disrespect to keep a job they desperately needed. Somewhere, someone was being underestimated, overlooked, dismissed. But because of Scene, some of those people would get help, would be recognized, would be valued. And that was enough. That was everything. Imani looked at her phone, a text from Noah. When I grow up, I want to do what you do, help people nobody sees. She typed back, you already are just by remembering. The divorce happened eventually. Preston and Miranda split custody. Both of them went to therapy. Both of them showed up differently. The house sold to a family who actually lived in it, who filled it with noise and life and mess. And the story of the poor nanny and the helicopter became something else. A reminder. A warning. A lesson. You never really know who someone is. Power doesn't always wear expensive clothes, and the people you mock quietly might be choosing patience, not accepting weakness. Most importantly, the helicopter doesn't come to save you. It comes to expose you. And long after the noise fades, the truth remains. 5 years after that day, Scene had expanded to 12 cities. Thousands of children had been helped. Hundreds of caregivers had been trained, supported, compensated fairly. Noah volunteered every summer. Piper donated her birthday money every year. And Imani kept working, kept building, kept seeing people. Because that's what the world needed. Not more helicopters. Just more people willing to look. Really look. And recognize the worth in every person, regardless of title, income, or status. The invisible made visible. The overlooked finally seen. That was the real revolution. And it started the moment one woman decided her dignity mattered more than their approval. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our next powerful story. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever felt invisible or underestimated? Your story might inspire someone who needs to hear it today. Remember, everyone you meet is carrying a story you know nothing about. Choose to see them.